thoughts that there's been so much work done on ESP that it's a fact, it's not a myth. And is it possible that psychic phenomena is nothing more than ESP?
It could be. It could be. One of the things that I'm definitely going to say is I don't have all the answers. When we talk about parapsychology, it's always a work in progress, right? And that's when you're applying the scientific method to in parapsychology, you're applying the scientific method to studies of what is considered extrasensory perception. The thing is that when we have so many studies that have been done that strongly support ESP, I kind of question why we're calling it extra now. Really, I mean that's the phrase that I'm kind of uncomfortable with. It's like it's not really extra.
Well, back then
documented.
Back when it was first investigated, it was considered to be something very unique. So they named it extrasensory perception. They didn't know 40 years down the road it would be called, looked at as sensory perception, and that's exactly what it is.
Exactly, I couldn't agree with you more. And that's maybe a time that it suggests that it's time for a revision of the models and the words that we use to talk about it, because that is influencing how people feel about it too.
Well, how can you expect them to remodel and reword everything in the world of psychic phenomena, extrasensory perception, when they're still teaching kids in school today that Christopher Columbus discovered America?
Yeah, we got a lot of work to do, don't we?
Sure do. Sure do.
A lot of work to do.
Tell me, what are your clients like?
Well, they are from every walk of life you can imagine. I have people that have been, of course, we've got the celebrity portion. That's part and parcel of the work. And then we've got people that are, well, I like to say it's homemakers and average Joes. I've taught people in white-collar and blue-collar professions. I've worked with groups of many, many hundreds of people and privates. So the work is varied and diverse, and I love that. But one thing that people share in common is curiosity about their spiritual nature. That's probably what drives most people to seek out the services of a psychic or medium. And a lot of times when it's psychic work, so we're not talking about people that have crossed on, we're just talking about using those inner sensitivities and sensibilities to tune into the client. A lot of them are just amazed because they'll have these intuitions that you're talking about. They'll have these gut feelings, and they won't trust them. And then they go to the psychic, and they hear the exact same thing from a complete stranger, and they say, oh, okay, now I believe myself.
Why would somebody go to a psychic instead of a trained professional psychologist or therapist?
Sometimes because they're making a mistake. I'll be completely honest with you there.
But mind you, to be fair, the world of psychics is one of the worlds with the most amount of fraud artists and con artists in it. So my question,
I would say that there's a lot of people that do that.
Absolutely. So my question back to you is, why would somebody spend $80, $90 to sit in front of a perfect stranger for 20 minutes or 30 minutes, or in the case of Sylvia Brown when she was around, what was it, $375 for 20 minutes? So why would they do this? Like I've gone to psychic fair. I've gone to psychic fairs, and I've watched people go from psychic to psychic to psychic to psychic to psychic. If psychic phenomena is such a dead on art, then wouldn't the first psychic have hit it on? Why would that person have to go to 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different psychics?
You raise a lot of questions, and I think the most helpful I can be in answering them is to tell you from the point of view of somebody who's worked those psychic fairs. And what we've learned is this. When you have a client that goes from psychic to psychic to psychic, they have a fixed idea in their head of what they want to hear. And if they do not hear it from psychic A, B, or C, they will go on to psychic D, E, and F. So that's one issue there.
All right, so let's just pause there for a second. Let's just pause there for a second. If that is the case, why didn't psychic, number one, pick up what that person wanted to hear and tell it to them?
They might have said it, and the person might not want to take action based on what they heard.
So they would go to the next psychic, who, if they are a true psychic, would also tell this person what the first psychic said.
Right. And if the client, the customer, does not want that information, or does not want to act on that information, I'd like to say, does not want to take that into an advisory type of role. Let me just give you an example.
Sure.
Say you've got a client that's coming to a psychic fair, And what she's really hoping for is the man that she's in love with will leave his wife and rescue her like the fair maiden, whatnot, right? Psychic 1 she goes to psychic number 1. Psychic number 1 says, I can see you're in love with this person, and, unfortunately, this is not going to happen, right? But in this client or customer's mindset, she is insistent that somebody tells her what she wants to hear. So maybe psychic number 1 is spot on, but she doesn't want to believe it. And so she or he, whomever the customer is, goes to psychic number 2. Psychic number 2 might also be spot on. Tells her the same things. Never going to happen. Doesn't want to believe it. Goes on to, until she gets the information that she wants to hear, perhaps from a psychic that isn't picking up so accurately.
So basically, this person who goes to a psychic is in denial.
That happens a lot.
And are all psychics trained to deal with these psychological problems that these people are having, or are they, in fact, putting these people who have psychological problems in greater danger because they're not trained professionals?
Well, there's two parts here. In the state of New York where I work, working as a psychic or a medium, you must say that you are working, if you're working outside of a church or religious institution otherwise, for entertainment purposes only.
Yep.
So that is the contract that you are making with the client ahead of time. That is for entertainment purposes only. We are not financial advisors. We are not medical doctors. We are not psychologists. And so a person who is coming for the advice of a psychic or a medium in the state that I work in is coming for entertainment. And that's very specific. So that's on them if they want to be entertained in that fashion. Now, when you're talking about the psychological counseling, it is completely inappropriate for a psychic or a medium to work in a psychological capacity. What they need to do is, if they happen to have that training, then put out their shingle as a psychologist or mental health professional. But I want to add one thing here, because I've been on both sides of this coin. Because I have the academic training, because I've sat in session with people who are my sex therapy clients, I can tell you that through sex therapy there is a formal, long procedure to get to the heart of the matter. You're not going to have appropriate sex counseling usually in 1 or 2 sections.
All right, we've got to put this on pause right now because I have to take my commercial break. And with the news, Exonation Dr. Rom Weber is our guest, www.drromweber.com. And we'll be back on the other side of this commercial break with the news as we continue here in the X Zone from our broadcast center in Hamilton, Ontario, Canada, and broadcast around the world on the X Zone Broadcast Network. We'll be back on the other side of this news break. Don't go away. Are you considering calling a psychic to read your situation? Then consider David Champion, a psychic medium for more than 20 years with thousands of readings under his belt. David Champion will make you feel comfortable. He has proven to be honest and accurate. He's a straight shooter. There's no guesswork. What he sees is what you get. While he is a medium, most of the calls focus on relationships, not only love, but work, school, neighbors, and more. Need help with finding a job and preparing for the interview? Are you dealing with people who are obstacles in your path? For more information, go to davidchampion.com, $1.50 per minute paid by credit card with a minimum of 30 minutes. For your reading with David Champion, call 1-877-702-8598. That's 1-877-702-8598. Now you can dial in to listen to the X Zone Radio Show from anywhere in the world with Rob McConnell 24/7, 365 by dialing 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080. If you have a mobile phone or landline, the X Zone Radio Show with Rob McConnell is now at your beck and call at 213-401-0080. That's 213-401-0080, 24/7, 365. Exonation, Dr. Rom Weber is our special guest this hour, www.drromweber.com. I'm sorry I had to stop you there, Doctor. We ran and smack into our news break at the bottom of the hour, so if you'd like to continue with what we were talking about, please go ahead.
Thank you. Well, one of the things we wanted to talk about was the difference between what it would be like if I had a client coming to me, say as a sex therapy client, versus having that same person come to me under the umbrella of a psychic entertainer. And one of the things is this. I have the same set of skills one way or the other. And if a client comes to see me in an academic setting, I'm going to do things like take their sex history. I'm going to be differentiating between presenting and slightly longer to get to the root of issues, the core issues that are coming in there. I'm going to be wanting to know about their medical history. I'm going to wanting them to, what is the issues coming out if they have a spouse or a partner? What is their history like? Things like this. There's a whole bunch of history taking and diagnostic information, and it takes time. Now, when you talk about doing work that is under the umbrella of psychic work or intuitive work, you're usually given anywhere from 15 minutes to an hour to work with the same person, and it's usually a one-off unless they're a repeat client. And a person can use abilities of claircognizance, clairsentience, clairvoyance, clairaudience, and so forth to sometimes get to the root of a concern very, very quickly. And for some people, that can be very helpful, and that's what the difference is. So you can't have a psychologist, you can't have a psychic be a substitute for a psychologist. You never want a psychic to take the role of a mental health professional.
Right.
But certainly psychics will say that a person will come with an issue, and because of these abilities to kind of see into the problem, sometimes you can get to the nuts and bolts of it a little bit more quickly, and that can be really helpful to a client.
As you know, Dr. Weber, we're up here in Canada. And up here in Canada, telling fortunes for consideration is against the law. It's in the Canadian Criminal Code. It reads, everyone who pretends to exercise or use any kind of witchcraft, sorcery, enchantment, or conjuration, undertakes for a consideration to tell fortunes, or pretends from his skill in or knowledge of an occult or crafty science to discover where or in what manner anything that is supposed to have been stolen or lost may be found, is guilty of an offense punishable on summary conviction. So
I can't tell your listeners that I can find their keys, is what you're saying.
You can't tell it, or you can't tell for here in Canada.
I can't find their keys.
You can't find their keys. You can't tell their fortunes, which means that you can't have somebody come in front of you and say, well, I see you finding Mr. Right, because that's against the criminal code. That's a criminal offense here in Canada. If you're charging money.
That's very interesting.
If you're charging money.
So, and I would think that the exception to that would be within the spiritualist churches, which do operate and thrive in Canada.
Within the church, so it's because...
Within the church, it's considered a practice of religion.
That's right.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I think that's why they differentiated in New York as well. And there have been other laws in other countries that are similar because, you know what, it's a buyer beware thing, and people need to be protected from fraud. Like, I'll give you an example. I've been working for 18 years now. When I do mediumship with somebody, I work with a guarantee because to me, it's a business practice. You say what you can deliver, and if I cannot deliver that, I do not charge. End of story, right? And so I have very specific things that I say, I can do this, I can do this, I can do this, but I can't do this and that. And we have that agreement as a business contract. And, that's the thing, is that, there should be a time and a space for people to be entertained if they wish. The problem is that, like you say, there has been a history of fraud, and we cannot deny that.
But even as an entertainment, if you go to a theater to watch a movie or watch a play, that establishment has to be licensed. So why are not psychics licensed? Have a criminal background check done, have some sort of criteria that meets either the state's or the province's regulatory body.